Greetings. My name is Emil Gawarn, and along with Tara Wyzik, we are presenting our team project for PSPM5240 Introduction to Purchasing. The project we're undertaking is to develop an app for the United States Army called the U.S. Army Enlistment Tool. You're probably wondering why this project. Well, we're making an app to help manage expectations for young adults thinking about enlisting before they contact a recruiter to begin the formal recruitment process. Our goal here is simple, and that is for those who are contemplating joining to give them a one-stop shop where they can go and find all the answers to questions about joining without feeling obligated or being bombarded with information they may not quite be ready for. Today, we will be discussing the following topics in order to provide the U.S. Army with the information needed to make an informed decision whether they should develop a new recruiting app in-house or have it outsourced to complement their existing GoArmy.com website. I will cover the first half of this presentation, starting with our objective, the organization responsible for Army recruitment, the current environment young adults have available, and what that environment should look like. Then I'll hand it over to my colleague Tara, who will discuss the options we propose and how to go about sourcing this option. Without further ado, let's look at our objective. Our objective is to develop a mobile app to help individuals planning on enlisting prepare for the recruitment process. GoArmy.com is a website, not an app. When accessing this site on a mobile browser, you reach a mobile website. Why is this important? Generally speaking, an app is useful for a very specific purpose that cannot be effectively accomplished via a web browser. Most young people are always on the go and always on their mobile devices, usually on a social media link. We need to reach out to them, and a dedicated app is the best way to do that. We are proposing to build a social media app that will be an extension of the current GoArmy social media plan, but will still be its own app with recruiter info, checklists, practice exams, and testimonials to help young people make up their minds. So who developed the GoArmy website, and why don't they have an app? Good question. U.S. Army Recruiting Command, USAREC, is the office responsible for recruiting young adults into the U.S. Army, and as you can see from their purpose statement. Their mission is to recruit America's best and brightest volunteers. Note that we've been an all-volunteer force since 1973, and keep in mind best and brightest. I'll address this point later. Moving on, the vision is to have an innovative team that competes for quality talent who are motivated, resilient, and are fit to win. Among their priority is to develop capabilities and get resources to enhance recruitment. They need all the tools that they can get, and a pre-enlistment app like the one we propose is aligned with this priority. And their enduring principles essentially is to empower their recruiters to accomplish the mission, keeping in mind they represent the Army's reputation and credibility, which is built on trust reinforced by Army values. So what is the current environment that USAREC faces today with respect to the recruiting mission? Not only are they responsible for recruiting for the active duty, but they also recruit for the Army Reserve. As you can see, there's a little less than 11,000 soldiers and civilian recruiters currently serving in USAREC at more than 1,400 recruiting stations, not only in the United States, but also overseas. But it appears they have not been able to meet their quota since 2018. In fact, they were short of their 76,000 goal by about 7,600 recruits. Why is that? It seems that recruiting the best and brightest is harder than it sounds, considering the challenges you see in the box on the left. The reality is that currently they face the most challenging labor since 1973. That is, half of young adults admit they know almost nothing about the military, much less probably serve in it. And more than 70% of them do not qualify for military service for many reasons, to include obesity, drug use, physical and mental problems, misconduct, and poor aptitude. In 2018, of the 70,000 recruited, 10 to 12% required waivers, and 1.9% of them scored between the 10th and 31st percentile on the Army's aptitude test. To date, only 1% of the population currently serves in the United States Armed Forces. One study recommended several options to address these challenges, such as increasing the number of recruiters, bonuses, and among them is to expand use of social media. This is even more important today due to the coronavirus pandemic, which caused recruiting stations to shut down effectively, cutting recruitment down by 40%. For now, let's focus on the 70% who don't qualify, which brings me to our next slide, the eligibility requirements. Approximately 4 million Americans turn 18 years old each year, but statistics show only 30% of them can meet the minimum requirements for enlistment, leaving 1.2 million able to serve, but of those, only 15% are willing to serve, which leaves about 1 million able yet unwilling. Of those willing and able, it is just about 180,000. Each year, the military must recruit about 150,000 enlistees who must be eligible for the requirements you see listed here: citizenship, age, criminal record, level of education completed, at least a high school diploma, if not a GED, and of course, must be in good physical condition. As you can see from the pictures to the right, how you answer certain questions can disqualify you, such as your citizenship, felony record, tattoos, depending on how visible it is, and even your status as a single parent. Again, keep in mind, some of these requirements can be waived depending upon the service and recruiting needs at the time. This pre-qualification questionnaire is great for young adults contemplating, so this will certainly be part of our app. So, as a young adult who is on social media, if you contemplate on joining the military, like the Army, what options do you have? Currently, doing a search for Join the US Army will yield the following results you see on the left, regardless of the browser you use, whether it be Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, or Safari. Now you'll see the ways to serve in the Army from the Army.mil. You'll see more about the enlisted requirements that we just went over from USA.gov. And the third one, GoArmy.com, will show you the process to become an enlisted soldier and the 6 steps that we will go over here shortly. Also note the YouTube videos you see on the right. With USAREC, the main page they use is GoArmy.com, which, if you recall from the last slide, was the third result on the list. What does GoArmy.com provide on their website? GoArmy.com advises interested parties to contact their local recruiting office to begin the process of recruitment. In fact, they have a 6-step process to follow. Those are: meet with the recruiter, required documents, academic evaluation, physical fitness evaluation, Army careers, and preparing for basic training. But if you haven't made up your mind yet, where do you go? What should you consider? Additional information such as finding your local recruiting office, career information based on assessments, physical test assessments, and requirements can be found on GoArmy.com, but you have to sift through multiple pages, links, facts section, again, not all in one consolidated location. Using Apple's recently patented buzzworthy quote, "There's an app for that," appears to be missing in GoArmy.com. So what exactly do we want in an app? Let's go to the next slide. We need to provide an app that prepares young adults for the recruitment process. Based off the 4 steps of recruitment from the USAREC website, these are the capabilities we want a mobile app to provide. We already covered the eligibility requirements, so the goal here is to make sure the potential recruit has the documents needed to prove eligibility. Next, assuming the young adult have all their questions answered, they need to talk to a recruiter, and the app would show them a listing of recruiters near their location with detailed information about that recruiting office. Once they found a good recruiter, one of the last steps is to go to the military entrance processing station, where they can go over all the checklists required, look at a practice exam, and take their physical exam and prepare for the PT test requirements. And finally, once they complete the MEPS process, they are ready to attend boot camp, where they will get either a delayed enlistment program date, or they can ship in the following month. Again, all this information will be provided in the app way before they make any commitment. Keep in mind that a mobile website is a good start, but a mobile app complements the mobile website by helping users accomplish certain tasks much more easily than they could in the mobile website. Hopefully by now we've convinced you that having a mobile app is a must. Now the question is, should we make it or buy it? For that, I will turn you over to my colleague, Tara.
Tara Wysick, and I will be reviewing the factors of a make or buy decision. The make or buy decision is the act of making a strategic choice between producing an item internally or buying it externally. The buy side of the decision is also referred to as outsourcing. When considering a make or buy decision, an organization or business must determine what their priorities are, cost or timeline. There are also many different options for development, and quality can be affected when determining these requirements. When doing the analysis and considering a make or buy decision, there are multiple ways to approach the decision. There are the practical elements, the strategic factors, and the operational factors. When taking the practical approach to decision making, there are a few things to consider for both options. Some advantages of in-house development are control of the development timeline, enhanced skills for staff, possible cost savings, easier maintenance, potential for fewer copyright issues, and the end product tools may be better and easier to use. Some advantages of outsourcing include industry expertise, awareness of recent industry developments, developers may be more credible than in-house ones, and may have access to the latest specialized software. From a strategic perspective, a business or organization should consider the in-house option when the item is critical to the success of the project, including if it affects customer perception of important product attributes. It is considered strategic if the item requires specialized design and manufacturing skills or equipment, and the number of capable and reliable suppliers is extremely limited, or if the item fits well within the firm's core competencies, or within those the firm must develop to fulfill future plans. Because these three categories are considered strategic, items should be produced internally for a business's future success. This slide discusses some of the operational considerations when debating a make or buy decision. At the heart of many of the make decisions is the desire to maintain control, such as over operations, production, and quality. Choosing to make a product or service in-house is also an attempt by an organization or business to maintain lower costs and improve or stabilize operations. When considering the buy option, many times it is because of the subject matter expertise that outside contractors or subject matter experts can provide. This is especially true when an organization or business that is not IT focused is attempting to provide or invest in a new technology. For USEREC's pre-enlistment app, they will need a minimum viable product, MVP, for an enterprise solution. In app development, an enterprise solution is needed if there will be over 1,000 users. This is absolutely the user load here. When developing an MVP for enterprise solution like USEREC, developers and programmers need to implement the following. It should be cloud-based so it can function offline and won't consume storage space on a computer or communications device. It can be multi-tenant, meaning that one infrastructure serves multiple customers. It should be resilient and scalable. Obviously, when discussing a DoD interface, it must be secure. From a user standpoint, it must be functional and have a high-end user experience. Back-end support for a minimum viable product of this magnitude should be done by a credible brand that has its own website, references, and industry analysts. It should be able to provide support in the correct time zones and have both a customer support and an implementation support team, essentially a quality assurance capability. There are about 10 steps during the mobile app development. There are about 10 steps during the mobile app development process that requires at least 6 SMEs. The first step is wireframing, which establishes a schematic blueprint. It develops a visual guide that represents the app layout, the flow between the screens, and the functional representation for your objective. In this case, the pre-enlistment information guides, maps, checklists, and practice exams. Wireframing requires a user experience specialist to draw up the navigation, screens, and all the elements and functions of both. App screen design designs the app screens and is done by an app designer. Programming the screens is done by a programmer. Both design and programming are done on the front end and can be an either-or option for both iOS and Android. The server-side framework and code implements the back-end functionality, and the API development connect the app screens to it. These are done by server-side and API programmers who focus on writing maintainable code for the best security and performance. Quality assurance addresses the usability, the versions and resolutions, and the back-end support. These are done by quality assurance specialists and app testers that have experience in looking for the functionality and design issues that are usually not easy to see by the developers. The cloud setup deploys the server-side application to the server/cloud and is done by a cloud specialist, often referred to as DevOps. The DevOps need to have experience in installing the application, create a reliable server environment, database redundancy, backup, security, performance, and scalability of the app. The last step is submitting the app to the App Store and is usually easy to do. When developing an app, there are multiple things to consider, and all of these options and specifications impact the development's cost, time, and workload. For example, when an app is developed, customers must decide if they want a native app or hybrid app. A native app is purchased through the App Store and is installed directly onto the smartphone and can work in most cases with no internet connectivity. Hybrid apps are part native apps, part web apps. Like native apps, they live in an app store, but like web apps, they rely on HTML being rendered in a browser. With these performance specifications come cost and timeline implications. Customizations of widgets, screens, and animation all take time to develop. Establishing the back-end and offline support is also time-consuming and increases costs. UserEC needs to decide how they want their app to operate and what customizations need to be developed in order to deploy a successful mobile app. Who develops apps for the Army? Currently, there are a number of different internal DoD and Army proponents that provide mobile apps. The Center for Army Leadership develops an app to help guide self-development efforts and leader development programs that works for Android, iOS, and Windows mobile devices. The Army Research Institute develops an altitude readiness management system for Android. And the U.S. Army Aviation and Missile Research Development and Engineering Center partnered with an advanced leadership class in Redstone Arsenal to develop an app that provides push notifications for critical alerts for Redstone Arsenal. With all the options available, we would recommend that USEREC work with TRADOC's the Army Distributed Learning Program, TADLP. They work with proponents to determine requirements, features, and specifications. They'll provide the command with a detailed project plan and a clearly laid out process and firm timeline. It will be USEREC's responsibility to complete front-end planning and coordinating their proposal with their respective legal, budget, security, and public affairs offices prior to beginning the process with TADLP. If USEREC does decide to use the in-house TRADOC option to develop their pre-enlistment app, then it is important to fully explore the strengths and weaknesses. From TADLP's website, one of the most impressive strengths is that there is no cost to the requesting organization. USEREC would work with a dedicated development team to create a fully vetted and authorized app. Because the Army has authorized the app, soldiers, leaders, and civilians would all be able to install the app on their personal devices. This will help USAREC provide young adults interested in enlisting up-to-date information to help them make the best decision. TADLP will also post the app to the App Store and will provide continuous back-end support after launch. This ensures that the app will continue to meet the needs of not only USAREC, but also their pool of interested candidates. On the flip side, there are some drawbacks to choosing to go in-house. The timeline is dependent on TADLP's workload, and it can take 9 months or longer to complete development. Also, TADLP limits personnel to only soldiers and Army civilians, so skill sets may be more limited because of Army training requirements. The limited skill sets may produce a more rudimentary interface, which can cause issues with not only user experience, but also security levels and back-end support. The TADLP developers will need to deliberately and effectively communicate with USAREC to fully understand the requirement and develop an app that addresses this problem set. If USAREC considers outsourcing their app development, they will need to know the strengths and weaknesses of this option as well. On average, the app development timeline is 5 to 6 months from planning to launch. This timeline will depend on the customizations USAREC chooses, but is at least 3 months shorter than having it developed in-house. Also, if they choose to outsource, industry often has more technical expertise, and the app's interface may reflect the developers' and programmers' extensive skill sets. Industry is more capable of developing hybrid, iOS and Android compatible apps for large enterprises. It is more likely that industry will be able to develop an app that fully meets USAREC's more complicated and technically complex needs. The biggest drawback for industry is cost. We will discuss specifics for costs in a couple of slides, but it's hard to compete with TRADOC's no-cost option. Besides the initial development costs, support and maintenance are an additional cost. Because these apps are developed outside the Army pipeline, all apps must be fully vetted to ensure they meet security requirements. This may add additional time to the timeline for launch. Outside developers may be unfamiliar with Army systems and processes, so there will need to be effective communication between developers and USAREC throughout the process. Lastly, but a consideration that needs to happen at the very beginning, is writing the contract. If the contract has not been properly written and the requirements are not included, then contractors may be limited to what's explicitly stated. If anything needs to be added or adjusted, the contract may have to be amended, and this adds time and potentially money to the overall product. The previous slide addressed specific strengths and weaknesses of outsourcing, but in comparison to using TRADOC's in-source option. This slide includes more general advantages and disadvantages for outsourcing that are not TADLP specific. To highlight a few of the advantages, outsourcing usually increases efficiency and decreases cost because they can retain talent better and have the people on board to deploy the app faster. Disadvantages include a lack of continued capability because contracts end and contractors typically do not provide extensive documentation of lessons learned. Another disadvantage is the potential depletion of the DoD workforce because the time and effort is not being put into developing its own employees' technical skill sets. As discussed previously, cost is usually the main deterrent for outsourcing. GSA's Mobile Government Office estimates that development costs for federal apps range from $50,000 to $300,000, with an additional $10,000 to $12,000 for annual maintenance costs. Here are two examples of cost for developing a mobile app, for all the functions previously discussed. To develop a hybrid app for iOS and Android that services a large enterprise, the total cost is around $162,500. A native app with all these same requirements is about $90,000 more and will cost about $251,000. We have attempted to help USAREC make an informed decision about whether they should make their pre-enlistment app with TRADOC's TA-DLP or whether they should outsource the development, maintenance, and support to industry with an Army contract. In order to provide them with the information needed to make this decision, we identified a gap and established a need for the mobile app. We reviewed the fundamentals of a make or buy decision at the practical, operational, and strategic levels. Then we provided a detailed description of the requirements and personnel needed to develop an app that meets the needs of an enterprise organization such as USAREC and its candidate pool. We presented the strengths and weaknesses of both options. Ultimately, USAREC must determine whether their priority is cost savings, expediency, or quality. Although the quality may be comparable between TA-DLP's development and a contractor's, TA-DLP offers their services at zero cost, but with the potential for significantly longer timelines. Outsourcing development can guarantee a 6-month timeline from planning to launch, but costs can range from $150,000 to $300,000. Essentially, if the goal is cost savings, USAREC should choose to develop the app in-house. But if the goal is expediency, they should choose to outsource and begin the contract development immediately.